4. On the call, we have Tony Lopez, Geraldo Williams, Nora, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. I apologize. And Assistant Corporation Counsel Brian Candela and Michael Church. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us. Do we have any public participation? I'm going to go with no. Does not appear we have public participation. So why don't we jump to the minutes from January? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes from January?
I'll move.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
Geraldo seconds. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? No abstentions. Motion moves. Thank you very much. Getting right into old business. If you'll pull up the Citizens Guide, we're going to review where we left off last meeting and see if we can't either. Go ahead. Yep.
I'm sorry, I cannot share. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
See, you built yourself up, Brian.
I kept my mouth shut.
Change your.
Can you ask the host to give you the power?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thank you, because there was no way I was going to be able to do this without that help. All right, so this is, like I was saying, this is Kara's thoughts, and we're on page 2. So what I can do is, these are very minor. So I'll start from the top and I'll just show you what her thoughts were. And then as we come to any red line changes that she might have made, you guys can make comments if anything. So on the first page, there was nothing. On the second page, you can see here that basically the formatting just got messed up, I believe. Let me just double check mine. I'll bring mine up here.
Are we going by the page numbers? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. There's page numbers at the bottom of the page.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
So that's the table of contents I'm looking at. The one.
Yeah, the table of content is right here. It's on page 2.
Yep.
And the formatting got messed up after last meeting. So it has A 1 through 6 as opposed to it not having anything. I think you can see that on yours. And then B 1 through 4, and then C. And then it has the complaint form and the code of ethics. So really the only changes that Cara recommended were just doing A with some numbers, B with some numbers, and C with some numbers, which I'm fine with making those changes. Just let me know. And
okay,
if you guys agree with that.
I'm a little lost on where we're at. I'm looking at the one document you sent me. Is that right or wrong?
So the one I sent you was the one that I had sent to you guys earlier, and it's the exact same document. So if you go to page 2, what you'll see is on the document I sent you, Cara's made some changes. So if you look at number 2 under guideline for ethical behavior on the one I sent, there's no A, and then there's no A1 through 6. And so it makes sense. Cara said, let's make this make sense and say 2A, and then subsections 1 through 6, and then B, subsections 1 through 4. It's just to organize the table of contents. Do you see that, Tony?
Yeah, I just see 2 and without, right, like without the subcategories you're referencing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that was the red line changes that you see on me sharing the screen on Zoom is what Cara recommended. So those are the only changes on page 2. If you guys are good with it, I don't know if you want me to.
I'm sorry. I was going back to your email that you sent me. That's why I couldn't see that.
Not a problem. I just wanted you guys to have a copy of it for yourself.
Sure.
But this is what Cara made changes to is what I sent earlier, and she just made some changes because she wasn't gonna be able to attend.
Well, let's just discuss this page real quick. Does anybody have an issue with the making it easier to find and labeled, if you will?
Good formatting. I like it.
All right.
I do too. It looks
All right.
straightforward to me.
So what I'll do is I'll make those changes. And then just under introduction, you'll see, this is a change that we made at the end of last meeting because you don't see a bubble or anything next to it with Cara's comments. But I left it in red line because we made this change and I couldn't remember if we voted on it or not. But it basically just says that this document does not supersede Chapter 32 of Norwalk City Code, which is the Code of Ethics. And basically what this is just advising everyone who's reading this document is that the Code of Ethics in Chapter 32 is what you're supposed to look at. And this is just a Cliff Notes. an assistance, a guide to try and make some sense of what could be some complicated language in certain points.
So it's a qualifying provision.
Yes. So. I don't
Anybody
know if
have
you-
issue
yeah.
with that statement while we're here? Let's,
No, it's wonderful.
I don't have
Especially when
issue.
it's
Leon?
red.
hold on, let Nora go. Nora?
And
I
I have
was
a
gonna say, I
comment.
don't have issue with it, but I might just go a tiny bit further and
Sure.
say, after code, comma, if there is any conflict between this guide and chapter 32, comma, chapter 32 governs. Just so we're 100% crystal clear.
Absolutely. I think we want to make this as clear, and that's very simple language for, very simple yet effective language for somebody who's trying to understand this thing. So I think that's an excellent recommendation. This document does not supersede chapter 32 of Norwalk City Code. If there is any conflict between this guide and chapter 32, chapter 32 governs.
Tony Geraldo, you good?
I'm reading
Do we
it.
want to qualify conflict? Like apparent conflict or perceived or anything to that, or just leave it?
Um,
I'm thinking out loud, or not thinking out loud, rather I'm thinking.
I was too,
There's any conflict.
because that's it. That's,
Discrepancy? Would we be comfortable with a discrepancy if there's any discrepancy or,
conflict is fine, but I'm saying qualifying it. We don't want to.
well,
how about that? Is if there's any conflict and or discrepancy between this guide and chapter 32, chapter 32 governs.
Tony?
Okay,
I can't think of the concept or word I'm trying to suggest. It doesn't want to come out, but that's okay.
Okay.
I think this is good. I want to be careful that we don't get too much into the legalese. The whole point is to keep it simple
Right.
and clear. And to the conflict point, just in case somebody's confused on what conflict means, maybe discrepancy gives them an alternative.
Right.
And if they don't understand, then they can ask us. But I think that's a good add from Nora's point.
Yeah.
How would that word fit in with apparent? When something appears as an apparent conflict or discrepancy?
Well, I don't think you need to add apparent if there is you could put perceived, you could put a bunch of adjectives,
Okay.
but all you're doing is just adding a word, because whether there is or isn't a conflict, it's going to be through the eye of the beholder.
That's why I was saying how it's construed, apparent. That's why I was trying to say that if it appears some way, then yes, 32 governs.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're saying it doesn't supersede 32, which means that it wouldn't be in replacement of the fact that we're saying supersede, and then if there's any conflict or discrepancy between this and chapter 32, chapter 32 governs.
So it
I
would be
think-
redundant.
Yeah, I think the language here is sufficient to let people know
Okay.
that while this is a helpful guide, it's simply a guide.
Okay.
And 32 is what's going to be, if there is a discrepancy, which we hope there isn't after the amount of times we've looked at this, but somebody, like you said, could have the opinion that there is a difference, chapter 32 is what you got to go with.
Excellent. On to the next.
I have a, wait,
Oh,
wait,
sorry.
wait.
Nope. Sorry. Go ahead, Geraldo.
I think you need to either make those two sentences or put a semicolon, because of the way it's written, this document does not supersede chapter 32 of Norwalk City Code, either a period or semicolon. Yeah.
If there's any conflict and or discrepancy in this guide in chapter
Yeah.
32, chapter 32 governs. Okay. And then down here, Kara said, let me just minimize you guys a little bit more. Since the Norwalk Code doesn't fully track the state code, I think we need to indicate that while the state code is informative and provides guidance, it is not binding on Norwalk officers or employees.
So to that end, again, from a keeping it simple standpoint, I think her recommendation is valid. Is just a sentence after I would say a sentence, or my thought is the sentence after the state of Connecticut, saying that the state of Connecticut is a guide. It is not what runs Norwalk officers or employees. I wouldn't use binding, and runs might not be the right word, so I welcome somebody else to use a better word.
Would you say inclusive or not?
I would not use inclusive either.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a really simple, clear word that's in everyday language. The state of Connecticut is for.
You could use governs again.
Yeah.
So was this, I have a question, was this intended to mean for additional information on ethics or the code of ethics? When it's
What's that,
referring us to the state, I'm trying to understand when we are when it's trying to essentially reference the state.
So I don't know. I don't know if the. Let me just. Let me see. I can try to find the current code, that citizens guide that we have right now. Let me just see if I can find it. Bear with me.
So while you look for that, I'm trying to understand if she's saying that, in general, for information on how ethics apply, that we can use it as a reference.
So it's in our current, as you can see here, I'm sharing the screen. This is the current citizens guide. As you can see on the first page, it says December 2009.
Yeah.
And so as you can see, we're in this paragraph down by the compass, and basically it has that language. So when we were editing it, we just didn't remove it. That's why it's there.
Not intended.
Quite honestly, I'm not sure that we need for additional information. We could probably get rid of the, because we're saying it's a guide. It only provides general information. It's not intended to be exhaustive. A complete copy can be found at the city's website. I don't think we need quite honestly, I don't think we need the state, that comment.
That's
Yeah.
That's my thought.
We can get, I mean, if you want, we can get rid of from 4 additional all the way to the end.
I agree.
I would agree to that, because I think by putting that in, it creates some conflicts. And
What do Nora and Michael think?
I was on mute. Nora?
Those two, by the way, excuse me, the first 2 sentences, I think say a lot and enough, and say it all.
It echoes what's being said above, that this is not the end all and be all. It's a guide. It's informative.
So the question which has been presented is, maybe instead of adding Kara's sentence at the end, we just eliminate the reference to the state.
Right.
That's correct.
So the question, so having looked at what Tony was reading, I kind of floated it out there, and I have the additional language if you want it. Otherwise, I think it makes sense either to add a sentence like Carr's recommending, or get rid of the sentence prior to that concerns the state ethics code, because it has nothing to do with our code of ethics.
I would recommend the latter, to remove the reference to the state, because I think that adds some confusion there.
Yeah, it's introducing something that's not relevant.
Okay. Nora, are you comfortable with that component?
Yes, thanks. That works for me.
Perfect. Excellent. There we go.
All right, so that's done.
Sweet.
So we're back. So don't get too excited. There's more changes that are coming. So as you can see, at the top of page 4, we're on guidelines for ethical behavior. Cara added an A, so that would be in tune with the table of contents, where she added the A in the 1 and the A in the 2 and the A in the 3. So she added an A under guidelines for ethical behavior, A, key aspects. So you can see the red line A right there. So that was one of her adds.
Hold on, before you scroll more,
Yep.
hold on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Should there be a numeric one or in these paragraphs below to fit with above? Or
Let me
A,
see,
B?
I think,
just wanna be
I think
consistent.
conflict of interest, officers, conflict of interest. Yeah, so I think the reason why one is that far, let me just double check here. A, two guidelines, key aspects is A, and then one is officers. So if you go down, there's conflict of interest or whatever, and then it's talking about that. So that would be one. This is all under subsection A, and then it becomes A1 down there under conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cara did have some recommended changes, but I think it's formatting down here.
have
So if you
some.
take, yeah, go ahead, Geraldo.
You have something on that. And that's back where you were, Brian, on
Yep,
A.
I'm
I
coming
think
back
where it
up.
says employees, it should say city employees, because it's not just
Oh, up
the key
here,
aspect of ethical behavior for city employees and officers.
like that?
Or either that or for, employees and officers of the city of Norwalk.
Okay, so under key aspects of
Yes,
ethical
right.
behavior.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
So I'm saying either
Yeah.
one. I don't know. Better to say for employees and officers of the city of Norwalk,
Right.
which covers both, or city employees and officers, because just leaving as officers
Mhm.
is still
Well, this is, and point valid, but this is the Norwalk Citizens Guide.
Yeah.
So inherently everything in here is for Norwalk people.
So
So
the
in this
other
case,
thing I have to do, Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt. The other thing that I have to do is before we finalize this, whenever that might be, I'm going to go back through the citizens guide, and then I'm going to go through the definitions that we have in chapter 32. So for example, employees and officers are defined terms.
Mhm.
So, and they're capitalized in the city code.
Mhm.
So I think it makes sense to capitalize anything that is a definitional term in chapter 32 should be capitalized here, because that would give people notice to go back to the definitional term under 32, but if you guys are okay with that.
I'm good with that part.
As you can see, the change at the bottom under 1 is formatting. It's just the font is messed up. So again, I will go through and do the definitional changes, and then I will make sure that all of the font is the same, so that we're not going from Times New Roman to some other thing. So I'll make that change. So this is Times New Roman, and this is. The
Hey,
reason it just
Brian.
looks different. Yep.
Just real quick, there had been some conversation, I think, at some point about getting someone to sort of do an overall reformat of this, maybe with some graphic design elements. Is that still on the table?
If somebody, I don't know if somebody wants to do that, quite honestly, this is about doing red line changes is about the most that I know how to do in Word. So I don't know if somebody's volunteering for that or.
Hold on. So Nora, just to update you, the city staff has been cut or retired. I shouldn't say cut. A lot of the city staff retired at the end of the year, so there isn't a lot of additional back end support, which is why Brian's doing all the red line and data stuff. I believe Cara previously has mentioned either she had a skill set or knew somebody that had a skill set. And so when she's back around, we might see if that's something that she can assist with. But yes, that was a component that we wanted to do to make it easier on the eyes and presentable on the website.
So for example, I know that some of these things, I believe, like that present, let me just double check, but I believe I didn't want to do that. Oops, I did not want to do that. This is why we can't have the state code of ethics, because people could click on it and go to the wrong place. If you take a look, see on the original Citizens Guide, this is from 2009, that gift is there. See that present?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you scroll down, there's some other, stuff like that you'll see. And then you see the person complaining on the phone.
Yeah.
But if you go back to Cara's, and this is the one that you guys have, and you scroll down a little bit, I'll show you something here.
Gets moved out of place.
Yeah, it's right here. So this is something that Cara was able to do the last time that we were going through a lot of it. Like she did this herself, which is pretty good. I can tell you. And she also did this flow chart, which I think was very helpful. So this is just an example of something that at least Cara or somebody that she knows how to do. So we could certainly, Nora, we could certainly talk about that. I think once we get the language done, if you guys want to put in additional images that you think would be helpful, you know, like a present or something like that, that you think might be helpful to somebody trying to understand this, we can certainly do that. I think that's something that somebody would know how to do. And yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, great. No, I just wanted to check and see, and I can ask, I can wait for Cara and ask her, because I can help her with that, or help her find someone for some of the fancier stuff if
Great.
need be. So I'll coordinate with her. Perfect. Because yes, I
Um,
understand. I don't want city resources if we don't have people doing it. I know Brian's got other things to do.
So if you take a look, this is really the first substantive change that she's recommending, that I think we could talk about. And you can see down at the bottom, it says, while in employment of the city of Norwalk, officers and employees shall not grant special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any person beyond that, which is generally available to the public. And she correctly points out that officers are not necessarily employees. Officers would include you guys, for example, or common council members. None of you are employed by the city. So I believe that her recommendation of while in his or her official role for the city of Norwalk, instead of while in employment of the city of Norwalk, is probably an appropriate change there, but we can talk about the language. But it's really from from while, I'm highlighting it right now. Basically, that highlighted version right there is the problematic language.
So why don't, and I'm thinking out loud and comfortable adjusting, but we could leave the while in employment of the city of Norwalk employees, comma, while in his or her official role for the city of Norwalk officers. So this way it delineates between the two. Delineates, excuse me.
Like, oh, let me just change that now. While in employment of the city of Norwalk employees. I think it's simpler to just say while in his or her official role for the city of Norwalk.
My only reason or concern, and I'm not stark against it, so I'm happy to go the other way, but just as to be contrarian for a sec.
Well, we could do two separate paragraphs, Michael.
Well, what I'm thinking is just the while in his or her official role for the city of Norwalk. I think that's confusing for an employee.
Okay.
Because I don't think people think of their jobs as an official role for because
Right.
it's, if you're a teacher, you're working for the Board of Ed, and do you think of that as the city of Norwalk per se?
Let's try this. Let's see if you guys like this. What's gonna have to happen is when we're done doing this, well, we can have Cara maybe add in those. So while in employment of the city of Norwalk, employees shall not grant special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any person while in his/her official role for city of Norwalk officers. How's that?
Now, question for the way we're reading this: if you go to the second line of either one, shall not be granted or shall not grant, or So like the way I'm reading it as it's written is an employee shouldn't grant somebody a special consideration, but aren't most of what we're doing saying you shouldn't be granted special consideration because of your role, or an elected official shouldn't
Well,
be granted special consideration?
that's a good point, Michael, and I think it goes both ways. I
Both
think
ways.
that you don't want people to abuse their power by granting others, and you don't want them to abuse their power by trying to grant themselves or have somebody grant them some kind of thing.
Correct. So to that end, should it say shall not be granted or grant?
Unemployment of the city of Norwalk, employees shall not be granted or grant special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any person beyond that which is generally available to the public,
And
and shall not be
granted.
granted or grant how does that look? Maybe there should be a comma after that. Shall not. Be
Also,
granted.
just as a point of note, I don't know how many minutes ago, but Lori Toronto is on the call now. So welcome, Lori.
Welcome,
Thank
Lori.
you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, not a problem at all. We appreciate you getting here.
How about like shall not be granted or proffer special consideration, treatment, or advantage to any person beyond that which is generally available to the public?
Say that word again.
Offer.
I think that's too high functioning of a word.
Provide.
What was the word?
Shall not be granted or provide. Shall not be provided or give.
Yeah, good.
I'm comfortable with that change to an extent. I think we're changing it for change's sake on that part.
Give or provide, you guys like better.
Can you
Provide.
reiterate what this is part of? In other words, one, because I already lost track of that top.
We're on to page 4, the last paragraph.
We're under 2A1, which is conflicts of interest. And so they're talking about city officers and employees not receiving something or giving something that wouldn't be generally available to the public. Whoops.
Yeah, give is fine, you know.
So we've separated out employees and officers into special paragraphs to delineate between the two. And as I indicated, Lori, earlier, I'm going to go through and I'm going to capitalize all the terms in the Citizens Guide that would be terms that are defined in the chapter 32, so people know that they're defined terms. I don't know if you were here when Nora raised the point that we might want to, you know, when we're done with the language, we might want to spruce it up with some graphics or things of that nature, like Cara did the last time with the flow chart and the other item that we'll probably get to.
Lori just got kicked off, so we
Oh.
can keep going.
Okay.
She'll be back, I'm sure.
All right. So is everyone okay with those changes to the two paragraphs, the employees and officers, separating them out, and the red line changes that we've discussed?
Yes.
Can I
Yep.
view, can you bring down the page a little bit so I can see the part above? I just want to,
Sure.
that part right there. Okay.
Yep. Let me get up, see if I might be able to get all of it. All right. So basically, that's where it starts. It's conflicts of interest, and this will get you to the bottom. I think everything fits on one page now. Now, just to note, what we, where Cara said it's a font change, this is not what it says in 32.4 anymore, because they made a significant change to it. However, I do believe that this, as a guide, provides people with information as to what 32.4 is actually saying, even though the language has changed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys want to discuss that. Right underneath the first paragraph under number 1, pursuant to.
Is the concept the same?
Same
In the
concept.
code of ethics, yeah, well, it doesn't have to be the same wording, right? This is really.
Correct. I mean, if it's the
communicating.
same language, then we're just kind of repeating for the sake of repeating. I think that
Yeah.
this is a pretty good, I think this is a more, like we're trying to do a guide, maybe simpler, easier language to digest for people that are reading something and then they come here to get some assistance and say, oh, what are they talking about?
Okay,
And this is also very helpful because here I know that Lori had specifically requested that we talk about people, requesting assistance or recusing themselves. This basically tells you that you have to disclose it, you have to recuse yourself. And if you're not certain, seek out an advisory opinion from the Board of Ethics. So again, this is guiding somebody who, if they see that there's an issue in the chapter 32, they know under this section if they might have a conflict or if they're not certain that they should ask for assistance.
I thought about something here, and so those 2 paragraphs that we just added that start off with while in employment, and the second one while in his or her official role.
Mhm.
Do you think that do you suppose that we should, in other words, title them as a section, not as a section, but as a subsection titled by the same words we use? For example, what did I just see there? Special consideration or advantage before the 2 paragraphs, as a small little section, to get the chase or the gist of what's about to be discussed. So in other words, let me back up. I may not have said it eloquently.
What page or paragraph are you
That's what I'm- yeah,
referencing that
that's
you're looking at?
It's on page 4, Michael. It's the 2 paragraphs we were just working on.
No, Brian, I know what you're talking
Oh,
about. I
okay.
want to see what Tony's comparing
Right,
it to, so I could see what.
So above
okay.
the 2 paragraphs that we have just worked on.
Yep.
That's in between, right? The preceding paragraph and the
So you're
beginning.
talking about the number 2 guidelines for ethical behavior. No.
I think he's
where it says-
talking.
Okay,
Are you-
above, right.
You see where I'm highlighting, Tony?
Correct.
You see where I highlighted? Are you
Yep.
talking about below
Right there.
that paragraph?
Exactly, right there. That's
So Michael, I think what he's saying is that he's asking whether we should do some kind of like 1 lowercase a, so like 1A,
Right.
and then have a subsection saying whatever it might be, employees and officers or
special consideration, special treatment, and leave it at that, because over there we're delineating from any inclination to conflate with what has been said above relating to business transaction. That's why. So if you do it temporarily, if you would include it just so like for the visuals. Just to visualize it. If we need to take it out, we take it out. Special consideration. The other word that was used there is advantage. I think it's a treatment and advantage or whatever, but
yeah.
Or special considerations, S in the comma at the end, whatever. I just thought that would like set the stage for this is what we're going to be, delineating now. I might be wrong.
I'm thinking. I'm open to Lori's and Geraldo's or Nora's thoughts.
let me get clarity on what Tony's proposing. I'm kind of confused with that. I'm looking.
See,
It's almost like a subsection underneath conflicts of interest. Tony's talking about having a subsection that identifies the last 2 paragraphs of this section as indicating to the person that they're going to be talking about something specific, like special consideration or
Gotcha.
employees and officers or something like that.
Merely
You want
just highlighting it and
Yeah.
merely delineating from what was discussed
Yeah.
above. That's all.
Yeah. Or so somebody in search looking for something would be easy to spot the content. of.
Right, exactly too. That's right. Yeah, because when you're
Yeah.
reading from the top, like I was, what
Yeah.
was going through my mind when I said scroll up a little, I was saying, how is this different from that? Let me read this again. And I could see somebody else doing the same.
They can
Do we
zero
have
in on-
any opposition to that?
I think it helps that somebody, a regular citizen could zero in on to something that they're looking for. If they're curious about something, often people would look at this if they're concerned. Hey, they experienced this. Is this a problem? And this way it helps them know what areas dealing with that instead of reading the whole thing and then get kind of confused.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Sorry, I apologize. Can you just run that by me again, what we're doing with it?
We're just adding that A subsection just to break up the bottom two paragraphs to draw lay folks' eyes to it, if you will.
So that we'll know what's covered in that area.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
just a
it
label.
definitely helps it stand out, but if I was just scanning this, I wouldn't know what special consideration means. You know what I mean? Like, prohibition against special consideration might be,
What was the first word
you know,
you
I
used?
think the separate section's nice because it does stand out part of it. Pardon?
What did you said something of you had a word preceding that which preceding the
He just wrote it, prohibition.
Yeah,
All
against
right.
special consideration.
I don't know that.
Oh,
Like
prohibited.
that.
Yeah, that's
Prohibited special
That was
consideration.
great. Yeah, that's good. Because then that would be like, well, what does that mean? And I better read it. Because I don't think if I was like going to give somebody, you know, some special preferential treatment, I'm going to key into that. I'm going to think of it in exactly that term. But having that subsection and having it highlighted, it's definitely something I know that I have to read. Prohibition of what? And that would make me want to look and say, well, what does that actually mean?
So how does everyone feel about those changes, which is basically just working on these final two paragraphs?
Looks good.
Can you move up again, scroll up a little bit again? I just caught that. Okay.
All right. So the top change on page 5 under gifts, what I did was you guys recommended last time that it might be helpful to identify, instead of having the person have to go find where gifts is, which was a good recommendation, to basically tell them that gifts is under 32.8. So pursuant to section 32.8 of the Code of Ethics. And then it goes in, and we were going to have a conversation about this week, because basically we have a laundry list of items that an officer or employee shall not personally solicit. And these are already identified. Let me see if I can pull it up. Bear with me 1 second. I'll try to pull up 32.8 right now. I'll do it on the share screen so everyone can see it and see what 32.8 looks like.
See, we shouldn't have any problem finding the code of ethics the way Brian navigates.
So as you can see here, so this is what 32.8 is. So we do have to change it because it's a value of exceeding 150, and that's not what we have currently in our citizens guide.
Yeah.
But as you can see under subsection C, it's talking about things that are not prohibited, and it's listing all these things, as you can see, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we can go through it. But those items that are not prohibited, not included are, and then it has a similar list, as you can see. So I don't know how,
What, and this may not be the answer, this is the ultimate simplification, is if we look at that first paragraph where it says value of 150 or more,
we did
not
catch it, okay.
include, not included are C section 32-8 for the list.
I think the simplest way to do this, because I
Or
think,
link to it.
I think that if you were to identify that, the following are not included in this prohibition, period, see section 32.8 subsection C, 1 through 11, people could read it. These are not, this is not in legalese.
Yeah.
And just thinking again out loud, and I don't know if this for when it's on the website or something, it's possible we could put a hyperlink when we write 32-8,
Yes,
sub, C11, whatnot,
Yeah.
is we could have a hyperlink that says click, boom.
we could absolutely do a hyperlink.
That takes you straight to that section.
All right.
Could I ask a
So,
question though, for
yeah.
formatting's sake? For readability, if we go back here, I think, kind of to Tony's point about the special considerations, if we bump out not included, like just, like put a return after no more and then not included and highlighted or something like that, I think it's just a little bit easier to read.
What do you, I'm sorry, Lori, what do you want me to do?
Hit return after no more.
Like that?
Okay, hit it space again. There you go. Just to, like, so it's easier to see what's not included, like what you can do.
Yeah, it's not as busy.
Not as busy, just, because like whites, I used to write technical manuals, and
Wow.
the more white space we have, like how dry and boring is that? But there's science.
Can't be
to it.
as dry and boring as Board of Code of Ethics.
It's like that. It really, they were.
You're well
so
prepared for this. So it's great to have you as an asset here and a resource.
interesting how it all turns out to be relevant somewhere in your life, but
Yep.
this, like, so in terms of like readability, like the more white space on a page, scientifically they found that improves the comprehension. So you could write all the same stuff, but if it's all densely packed in versus we have white space between the sections, it makes it that much easier to grasp. So just a suggestion.
And this is what I'm going to do. Add. We'll bold that so it kind of stands out, and I will put it in yellow. So as you can see, I'll just show you. As you can see at the top of 32, they have two items here that I have my mouse over.
Yeah.
Okay. These are the two most recent changes to the Code of Ethics, the two final changes, so to speak. And I can take a look to see if those have been inserted yet.
Okay.
They have not. So so once those changes, once those changes have actually been inserted into the code, I can add the hyperlink. Because otherwise the hyperlink will take me to this page, this this PDF, which will not exist forever. So once that's done, I can add that hyperlink.
Fair.
So then does that mean that we want to get rid of all of these things down here that I'm highlighting?
I wouldn't think so.
I'd leave them. I'd leave them.
All right, so what I want to do then is, what I want to do is I want to get rid of these, and I will cut and paste in the actual list of 11, unless, well, we probably have to make them a little bit more simple than what they're listed on, because otherwise we're just regurgitating what's in.
Well, that's my thought, and what was the point of, doesn't the hyperlink take you there? I'm not sure I understand.
The hyperlink will take you there.
So what's the point?
Well, so my point of the hyperlink was actually to get rid of the rest of the
Right.
jargon because
Yeah.
it's just
These-
being repetitive.
The things
Yeah.
that I'm highlighting.
Yeah, but you know what, this guide though is to
Simplify.
improve the comprehend, like nobody, like, I think it's gonna be hard for people if they
Well-
go to the, you know, ordinance, they're gonna look and they're gonna go, you know,
Well, my point is, I think while the rest of the guide does speak in layman terms, I would think that if you look at pick any of these bullet points and compare it to its component or counterpart here, I think it reads pretty consistently, like verbatim almost. And so I don't think there is actually any simplification of the language. Brian, not to add
Yep.
too much, do you have the ability to do like a half and half page so that we could see?
Compare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hold on one second. Let me,
I mean, I'd be happy to work on trying to make it a little bit more readable, you know, like, you know, to edit that and then.
Well, but so like one that stood out to me was the commercial rates line. Is I don't know that there's any more way to simplify it or change the words, and yet it's saying the exact same as the actual code.
So
And there was also one that had a $200 gift thing, I believe, and that seemed to read pretty identical. I don't mind if we're using better language for the guide. I'm all for it. But if we, and we can go through one, line by line, but I don't know that we're actually simplifying it. And if we are, then my point is irrelevant.
oh, maybe what we can do is, so I got rid of the split screen for a second. Just bear
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah, take it.
So let's just come back to gifts
Mhm.
because we already did conflicts of interest, and I'm not certain that there's much more else besides gifts. So let me just double check. So we'll come down here. Employment was a formatting issue. It's just changing A to B or whatever it is. And there was no changes here. These are all
Wait,
been,
I have a change on there.
Yep.
I have a question about the pigeon and the park bench.
yeah,
What does that graphic mean?
I have no idea. I'll show you here.
Okay, because I was like, you lost me. Like, I like the little gift one for gifts, but I was like, the pigeon and the park bench, what's that? You know?
It's been in our
Oh,
code. It's been in
public
the citizen,
property.
it's been in the Citizens Guide since 2009. I don't know who's responsible for this.
It's a
I don't
pigeon
know,
doing
maybe we could-
business by a bench.
We could get a new
Yeah, I was
picture. We could
I'm like,
we should talk about a new images maybe.
yeah, that's
See here.
It's-
All right, so
I don't know, it'd be
these,
interesting, like psychological test to see what you think, because I immediately think of like some homeless person laying on the bench or something, which I don't know, you know, maybe you guys think of something else, but you know, I'm like, what is that there for?
It's a great it's like an ink block test.
okay.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah, or an old
Alright.
lady feeding the pigeons, something, I just wasn't thinking about it, as I couldn't for the life of me figure out any connection to any of that.
All right, so this section, number 2,
Mhm.
gifts, which is on page 12, with the present at top. What we're really down to here is we've agreed on I believe we've agreed on the first paragraph. And now we're talking about what language should we add in, if any, after the indication that it shall not include, this section does not preclude the following. We identify the section of the code and the hyperlink. And now the question is, what should or should we not have underneath here? Besides that, there's really no other major changes left. So I don't know if this is something that if somebody wants to try and go through and create like a Cliff Notes version of the gifts that are allowed under 32.8C 1 through 11, so that we could add them in. I don't know if that's something that someone wants to do offline, but it seems like, at least here, we're only talking about this last page unless people have other changes.
I do believe that since it is a guide, it's not supposed to be all inclusive. that again, it might be busier than we would want it to be for the layperson to see it as a guide. And if the hyperlink is supposed to take them directly to what the provisions are, it's my opinion, I think that should be sufficient and it should be cleaner looking. Because when you add more details as we would consider doing so, I think it just confuses more. Like, what is this and how is this different from, from what's in the, in the actual provision. And when you start going back and forth and doing some comparison, it might give reason to doubt, what is this and what's that?
Well, can we go to section 32.8, Brian?
Yes.
To see and we could just read through real quick.
Here, let me, this is what people asked for before. Let me,
I'll just tell you, I would be happy to try and put this section in modern lingo. You guys can tear it apart, at our next meeting, but I'd be happy to take a whack at it.
Lori,
My concern about the hyperlink.
Before you spend your time, so the reason I wanted to pull up the side by side, so using number 3, political contributions received in compliance, like for number 3 and number 4, without having read any others, those were just one line. I don't know that there's a different way to put that without, like, those are pretty straightforward. So what I just want to be cautious with, and I'm open, Laura, if you want to spend your time, I'm not against it, as just, number 8, goods or services provided to the city. Number 9, meals and these seem pretty straightforward without legalese to begin with.
Mhm.
So I didn't want us to try to confuse it by writing different words that would people be like, wait a sec.
No, and maybe some stay just exactly the way they are, but maybe there's just a way to edit down some of the words and not do, but my concern about the hyperlink is who's going to maintain it. What if the link dies and there's nothing now in the section for anybody to read? We can kind of say, refer to the link for any updates or, something like, I don't know, but I just am concerned that this is a really important one.
Then to your point, let me pose it this way. It's okay. Somebody wants to print this out and the hyperlink doesn't print because it's a printable thing, so you can't connect. So then do we just copy and paste what's in C so that we just have it accurately verbatim? I don't think it's too wordy in the actual code and in too much legalese. And again, we could read through it, and I'm open if you think it is and you could put different wording to it. I just think I don't want to oversimplify it, like in what we have right now. It says gifts loan, well, but at the same time, I don't want to repeat it with different words. I might as well just copy it because it is basic and simple. So that's my point.
How much of a problem have we
definitely
had with what Laurie's suggesting could possibly happen with hyperlinks disappearing or becoming outdated? I mean, is that what I'm saying? Is that common or
yeah? So
what I would say is that one of the things that I want to do after we're done with this citizens guide, because the code of ethics has now been completely updated. But if you take a look at, hold on, Norwalk Committee.
I mean, we could have hyperlinks to refer them to the section so they've got the guide and they've got the actual, legal lingo to read, so they can't say they never, like there was something missing, like we always refer them back to the actual part of the code. So I think the links are great for that if it's going to be maintained.
So one of the things that I want to do, and I know it can be done because I've done this with ordinance committee, is when we have public hearing notices, we put them in the paper because that's what's required by charter. But most people probably don't purchase the newspaper anymore. So IT was kind enough to insert a link in the ordinance committee after agendas and minutes are in between them, and it says view public notices. And so when we're done with the citizens guide and the code of ethics, this is the Board of Ethics website page on the city website. And so people can access the Code of Ethics and the Citizens Guide by Googling it, or they can come to the city website and search the Board of Ethics, and underneath agendas and minutes, I want to insert a hyperlink that they can click on that will take them directly to our current version of the Citizens Guide once it's completed, and the current guide of the Code of Ethics, because some people who have inquired about the Code of Ethics, residents, do not know how to locate the code, because there's no link on the city website. I guess they have difficulty Googling it and finding it. They're not certain if it's the right one. So I want to add in 2 hyperlinks on this page so that people know, well, this is the official city website for the Board of Ethics, and here are the hyperlinks to these 2 documents. So that's another way to be a little bit more transparent so people can find it. It's not exactly what you guys were talking about, but that's another way that the public can at least have access to these documents.
Great. Sounds good.
I think that'd be great.
Hey, Brian, I'm looking at your screen. So does it look like, it looks, if I'm reading this right, looks like Nora and I were approved by the Common Council?
No, that means March 10th, 2021 is 2 weeks.
Yeah, but are we reappointed, or do we know anything about what's happening?
Sure. Hold on. Let's see well, let me put it, okay. So who's on March 10th? Michael,
Nora and
Lori. Let me just double check here.
Oh, so March 10th at the council meeting. But why does it say council?
You were approved your previous term, and this term expires March 10th. And so they have to reappoint or, reconfirm us
So,
for our next term.
In answer to your question, I don't know. This is not a page that's updated by me, but I can give you an answer on 1 second.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interject.
it's fine. It's fine.
Just happened to sit there and I was wondering.
Let's see.
There might be all kinds of people like really fighting to get on this commission, and
You hear the birds chirping? What? Hey, it's important work for the city. Others understand it.
There's
All
no
right,
question
so all right, so I will follow up, but my understanding is that all 3 of you, Michael, Nora, and Lori, have all indicated a willingness to continue on and continue to serve on the Board of Ethics at this time. And so they're aware of that, but I will follow up. And ensure that you guys will be on the next agenda.
Sounds good. So let's just see if, Lori, do you want us to push this final section till the next meeting to see if you want to
I'm okay with it. Yeah, I'm okay with that's fine. But that first bullet, gifts, alone, we're getting rid of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We can. So what do you guys want to do? Let me just pull it back up, and then I'll send the email out reminding them.
Well, I think to me, and I'm open to other thoughts, the 2 options are copy
All or nothing, right?
Yeah, it's copy and paste what's in the Citizens Guide, not the in the code.
So Michael, so what I can tell you is this: is whatever you guys decide to do is easy. It's either going to be a delete for me, or I can delete what we have here and then cut and paste what we have currently in the code and paste it in. So I can either delete it and leave it deleted, and all we have is the hyperlink and the C section, or we'll have that and then we'll list all 11 of those items that are found in the code. But that's an easy fix that we can do at the next meeting. If we're doing either or, then nobody has to do anything. I can do that at the next meeting, like very quickly.
Excellent.
Save everyone some time.
Could we put some kind of heading on that section though? Because if we go back to the previous page and we go ahead, everything's got these nice bold headings and then the text follows, except for this one.
It says gifts.
It starts. No? Where? Did I miss it?
Yep.
Oh, you know what it is? on my page, the pagination, like the gifts is on the previous
Yep.
page, the heading.
Yep.
So,
Fix
so
that.
Laura, you might not have been here. I don't think you were here when we talked about this. The formatting on this document is all
Okay.
screwed up. So
Okay.
when we have all the language done the way that we want it, I will go about, or I'll have somebody go about retyping all of this with the appropriate formatting and paginations. And then somebody with their technological wizardry can put in the appropriate pictures and
Okay.
images that will help everybody, but we will get a better version of this because this was, the formatting in this is all messed up.
Okay. And so we'll get rid of the pigeon and the bench.
Oh yeah, we can get rid of whatever you guys want.
A special note to Lori, get rid of the pigeon and the bench.
It was just a head scratcher. I was just like, what is, how could I, like, I really was, like, why can't I figure that out? What is the meaning of the pigeon and the bench?
You have to remember 2009 was a very long time ago in tech years, and that was cutting edge imagery at the time.
No doubt. Yes. No doubt. Okay, great.
Facebook was only 5 years old and only college kids could be on it at that time. And look how far we've come.
It's true.
Excellent. Is there anything else? I don't think at this point we should just start discussing how we're going to, share this with folks. I think we should do that as a whole meeting in and of itself. Is there anything else we should go over this evening?
I don't think so. Not for me.
I'm just quickly checking the agenda, make sure I'm not missing something. Go ahead.
Maybe I could add something. I think at some point we should start planning how we're going to roll this out, and specifically how we are going to communicate the presence of both the code and the guide to the office, starting with the officers. I think one thing is we have spoken about the guide and letting people in the community know. I think a big issue is really making sure that the employees and the officers are aware of the code of ethics. I would believe that the majority of the employees of the city aren't even aware of the code of ethics, and to know that they're being held to that. So we should look at some way that we're gonna.
Geraldo, I just wanted to let you know that I did reach out to the Board of Ethics when we were
We are the
doing,
Board of Ethics.
I'm sorry, the
To the
Board of
who?
Education, Mother of God.
Yeah.
The Board of Education, I reached out to them and I let them know, or I reached out to a couple people up there and reminded them that the Code of Ethics applies to the Board of Education people. And I forwarded them all the updated code sections. But again, I don't believe that includes 32.4 or 32.8 because those were done over the last 6 months. Now that the entire code is completed, what I'd like to do once the code is done and once the citizens guide is all done is I want to send it to the appropriate people at the Board of Education and then perhaps department heads for each of the city departments so that they can disseminate it to their employees. And then we can try to set up something maybe through personnel about having some meetings or seminars about the code
Well, and
and the citizens guide.
the great thing to go into that is everybody's used to Zoom now, so we don't have to try to get people to come to City Hall in a room or, any place in a meeting room. We could, set up something like this. And I think also to just touch on it, since we are going into it, is between, the hour Nancy on Norwalk or get something out on a social media page, the citizens will start to pick that up as well, be interviewed or something. So I think there's different ways in the environment that we're in that people will be more comfortable with talking, hitting it from the department head angle and, personnel angle, but then also out into the social media world, if you will. And I think it'll pick up some traction there and just make people aware.
Sounds like a good idea. And then one question I have, Brian, is like if you could see if other cities, because I have to do this in my employment where every year I have to sign that I acknowledge and I understand the code of ethics, and I have to disclose, do I have any bankruptcies or liens or judgments or whatever. And I'd like to know if other cities are making their employees similarly acknowledge that they've read and understand the code, because, from an employment perspective, is that something that we should do? And are other cities doing it?
So I think that's a good idea. We can certainly do that. I can certainly inquire from CAMA. I can tell you that there are ethical seminars that are put on by Connecticut Conference of Municipalities,
Oh, that's right.
which is free if you're a member, and we're a member. I will give you the example that a couple years ago, they actually held the ethics seminar for the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. They hold 2 a year, and one of them was in Norwalk, in one of our, not in the concert hall, but it was somewhere else in the building. So, I mean, it was like a 3-hour seminar, and the lady went through multiple situations that would be applicable to municipal staff, municipal officers. She did hypothetical situations. So not only that, but when these things come up, these ethical seminars, if they come up in an area where it's reasonable for somebody to go, it's probably one of the more useful things that somebody can do. And because I've sat through all of them, because I also need to do ethics seminars every year pursuant for Connecticut and New York. And I thought it was helpful for me, and I'm fairly knowledgeable about this after all the years I've spent with you guys. There are other people who don't even know it exists. So, or if they do, they don't really have much knowledge about it. So I think it would be incredibly helpful for them. So again, if I get the CCM thing notice again for ethics, I will certainly forward it on to as many department heads as I can think of.
Okay.
But I was referencing something like what Laura stated. In my experience in most corporate environments, you're not just saying that you tell the personnel, but you ensure that they have a process in place to communicate to all, not to most or to some, but to all of their employees. Because if something should happen, I can bet you not even 5% of the teachers are aware of the code of ethics. And okay, if something should happen, they're exposed, the city's exposed. So it's really about, ensuring that there's a process. I know the state of Connecticut, as an example, has something comparable to what Laura's referencing, which is similar to what exists in most corporate environments, that every year you have something that all employees have to, even if they're going to send out an email and everybody have to confirm that they have read it or that they understood.
That's right. You can't fire them if you can't prove that they knew about it. Yeah, if something happened.
So what I'm saying is just having something that we work with the different agencies within the city, whether it's the Board of Ed, et cetera, the different places where they have their personnel, and make sure there's something to roll this out. We're not going to do it, but we're going to make sure that they have something. We can reference what's used. Like, I know there are resources in the state that the state has made known that these things are available to different municipalities to help communicate to their staff with even some software system. So I think it would be good for us to spend some time at least talking about how we're going to communicate and roll this out to all the employees and officers, even with the elected officials. Sorry, I was just going to say, even like the elected officials, we could have a process that after an election, everybody before they're sworn in, they're given a copy and they're told and they have to sign off that they have received it.
That's right.
That's very basic, but it's
I gave everyone a copy of the most recent, whenever the last election was, all of the common council members received a copy of that. So very good point by Geraldo. And
I'm saying, is that possible? Because if you're not there, then what happens, Brian? If you leave, would your successor do it and say, "Oh, nobody told me that we're supposed to be doing this"? So
no, exactly. I think you're right. I think there should be a process. I think there should be a standard. I think there should be all those things, because then that's what people will expect.
Yeah, and that's how you hold people accountable.
Right. Exactly. I think what you're saying is almost like a change in the culture, so to speak.
Yeah.
Huge change.
Brian, if I may, your suggestion about the education, I too, like Lori, like you, every year have to take the same ethics and compliance. And what I'm just merely saying is to expect someone to sign a document and that's it. In today's world, I mean, the state of Connecticut requires, for example, classes for all employers or employees to take for sexual orientation, right? Right?
And that's why I was saying, you know, with software, the state has things even on the code of ethics
Right.
that can be used by all municipalities to make sure the employees are aware.
But there should be some push in some way, to formalize in some way where individuals can take a level of training like you suggested, Brian, 2 hours, 3 hours once a year. I don't think it's enough with a document. Training goes a long way.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, Tony, I agree with you. I think it's both. You have to do the presentation. And, you know, after the initial Zoom presentation, it can be recorded. And then a new hire, somebody coming into the city can just watch the recording and sign a document that they've, you know, gotten a copy, a hard copy, they've watched the training and they acknowledge that they have received the materials and they understand, you know, that they're bound by this code and what that means. And that's it, you know, so, yeah, but I think you're right. I think it's both. And then if there's updates, you know, people have to be informed of that too, but I think that's critical.
And I've been in places where they have the code of ethics training and there's no Zoom or anything. You just, everybody have to go online and, you know, the training is all automated, similar to what the state has.
Which would be more money for us. So I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, if Brian's doing the training and it just gets recorded, then, you know, they can watch, you know, but whether it's, you know, a written training module or a video, you know, or both, you know, because with questions and answers, you know, so I mean, that's what I have to do is I have to take a little test and then I have to, you know, sign a thing. And it's not a, you know, it's not a, you know, it's just a basic test, but it just, you know, I'm verifying that I understood. Yeah, the big
attestation. Testing that. And I think, you know, to the point of cost, that just like Rory described, such a module where all employees are required to take it, and the module's online, and they have this whatever Social Security, and it's coded to them, so you can attest that they took it, and you're done.
Yep, they've been trained and they've acknowledged receipt and they're aware, and we can prove it if we ever needed to, if there was ever an issue.
It makes it cohesive, it makes it tight, it almost makes it almost fail-proof. But now you have well-informed employees.
Okay.
I'm nervous about informing the public like that though, because I think about like vexatious complaints like we have dealt with before. You know, drumming up business here, but the public does need to know that we have a code.
They do. Yeah.
Of course they do. I'm kind of joking about that, but I'm just dreading that, you know.
Well, I don't know that the public needs to, in other words, go through the actual module, you know, referring to that should be more for the, I think.
Oh, no. It's not for the public to know about the module, but it's for the employees to do that stuff, but to let the public know that the city has an updated
code of ethics.
You know, for the employees and the elected officials. Well, this is good. I really like Kara's flow chart in the back. You know, the process.
Yeah, she did a marvelous job with
love
that.
That is so helpful.
Okay.
Excellent. So is it anything else before we have adjournment?
Not for me.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, Nora. All opposed? No abstentions?
Nope.
Motion carries. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Brian, again, thank you for all your work and documenting all this and using your tech savvy skills to share your screen and keep us all in the loop. We appreciate it. Everybody
You
have
guys
a
an
good night.
updated document when I'm done working on it.
And we
You got
didn't
it.
say
Stay
confidential
healthy, all.
information.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody. Have a
thank
good
you, y'all.
night.
See ya.
Bye. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks.